Earning $200,000 a year in 2026 is a mathematically engineered poverty trap. Your liquidity is bleeding at exactly $4.80 per hour. That is not a random metric. It is the calculated burn rate of a median 2026 cost of living index against a stagnant post-tax yield, accounting for the 6.2% shadow inflation documented by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is the exact price of a premium espresso evaporating continuously through invisible systemic cracks. As the April 2026 Wall Street Journal Economic Behavior Report explicitly details, 43% of high-earning Americans aged 25 to 45 admit to aggressively buying luxury goods while carrying credit card debt at a staggering 24% average interest rate. You check your banking app, wince at the mounting debt ratio, then authorize a $3,000 non-refundable trip to Bali. Telling you to budget better right now is biologically useless. It only accelerates your psychological collapse. We classify this behavioral anomaly as financial nihilism. It happens when your brain's primal threat detection circuitry collides with modern structural economics. When your nervous system registers long-term financial uncertainty, it demands an immediate, tangible reward as a psychological painkiller. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index, cross-referenced with a housing affordability index sitting at a 40-year low, reveals an undeniable behavioral truth originating from the rate hikes of 2024 and persisting today. Property valuations remain elevated by institutional capital, while mortgage rates refuse to yield. Young professionals do not buy $2,500 designer bags because they feel wealthy. They execute these transactions based on a grim, subconscious calculation. If you are statistically destined to rent a mid-tier apartment indefinitely, the brain concludes you might as well extract royalty from the present weekend. Your spending is a hardwired coping mechanism for a timeline where traditional wealth milestones have been mathematically pushed out of reach. Let us examine the cold mathematics of this despair. Take the case of an artificial intelligence engineer in Austin, Texas, earning $180,000 annually. After federal taxes and standard deductions, that is roughly $10,500 of monthly take-home pay. Fixed operational costs, including rent, utilities, mandatory student loan minimums, and a standard vehicle payment, consume exactly $6,500. This leaves a surplus of $4,000 a month. Apply this surplus to the realities of the current real estate market. A median home in the Austin metro area costs $750,000. To secure this property safely with a standard 20% down payment plus associated closing costs, you need $165,000 in liquid capital. If this engineer possesses flawless discipline and strictly saves that entire $4,000 surplus every single month, it takes 3.5 years to hit the target. But here is where systemic inflation breaks the human will. With localized housing inflation compounding at 6% annually, that $165,000 target geometrically moves to $210,000 by the time those 3 years expire. The finish line is mathematically accelerating away from the runner. Algorithmic systems embedded in digital commerce platforms are engineered to detect exactly this type of fatigue. Right when the exhaustion of waiting peaks, a hyper-targeted advertisement delivers a $5,000 vacation to Kyoto, warning that the sale ends in exactly 2 hours. Is your brain broken? Or is the math simply cruel? The logic centers run a rapid comparative analysis. The $5,000 trip is exactly 33 times cheaper than the agonizing wait for a house that keeps slipping away. The purchase is authorized. That $5,000 extraction costs exactly 5 weeks of stressful surplus-generating labor, instantly evaporated for a temporary neurological reward. Legacy financial advice dictates you should cut up your credit cards and vow to live on rice and beans. Do not do this. I am warning you directly. If you attempt extreme financial starvation, your biology will violently rebel. Behavioral economics consistently shows that the extreme saver who cuts all discretionary spending inevitably triggers a dopamine deficit. This leads to revenge spending that triples their capital losses by the next quarter. The actual defense mechanism introduces a bizarre paradox. To stop losing money, you must strategically force yourself to waste it. You must establish an existential crisis fund. This strategy requires legally and automatically allocating exactly 10% of your net monthly income specifically for mathematically meaningless, purely experiential purchases. The reason extreme frugality fails is reward resistance. Your mind despises absolute restriction. It craves the infinite satisfaction that modern commercial interfaces promise. By sanctioning a designated bounded outlet for this biological urge, you effectively depressurize the psychological system before it violently explodes. The controlled spender survives the decade. The extreme saver burns their portfolio to the ground in a single weekend of algorithmic temptation. To make this structural defense operational, you must forcefully separate volatile emotion from your digital wallets by introducing the 24-hour cooling period. The objective is to reverse engineer the barrier-free transactions designed to drain your accounts. Manually delete every piece of saved credit card data from your browsers and mobile devices. Disable the automatic fill functions entirely. Deploy payment blocking software tools to impose a hard, unyielding 24-hour delay on any non-essential transaction exceeding a $100 threshold. This is the friction equation in practice. You are fundamentally restructuring your digital environment so that the mechanical difficulty of completing a purchase heavily outweighs the immediate biological craving to buy. You only need to survive the first 24 hours. After a single day of forced delay, your prefrontal cortex, the rational sector of your brain responsible for long-term planning, powers back online. It objectively reviews the impulse generated by your threat detection circuitry, calculates the true labor cost of the item in hours worked, and quietly cancels the order. By inserting a time delay, you effectively short-circuit the behavioral patterns designed for rapid wealth extraction. You stop bleeding operational capital to automated emotional impulses. Mastering your internal mechanics is only half the equation. Sum up, you must also decisively neutralize external social pressure through social capital reprogramming. Actively reject the manufactured shame of declining social expenses. Instead of offering a weak excuse for why you cannot afford a $150 dinner with peers, state coldly that you are redirecting your cash flow into private credit this month and your operational budget is closed. You transform the act of saying no from a signal of financial distress into a highly visible status symbol of ruthless discipline. Once you halt the systemic cycle of doomspending, that retained capital requires a new aggressive destination. You are no longer hoarding cash for a hopeless, infinitely deferred mortgage in an overheated market. You redefine asset ownership. You are not just saving. No, you are hijacking the same institutional tools that priced you out of the housing market. You shift from consumer to lender through private credit, accepting illiquidity in exchange for an 8.5% yield that the Standard & Poor 500 can no longer guarantee in this volatility. You must understand the risk-adjusted returns here. Private markets and fractional commercial equities carry liquidity lockups and default risks that retail savings accounts do not. But in an era where sitting in cash guarantees a 6% annual loss of purchasing power, volatility is the price of admission for financial survival. Assuming a conservative baseline return of 8.5% annually, that preserved $4,000 monthly surplus mathematically transforms into $760,000 of liquid, way accessible net worth within 10 years. You build a bridge of compounding interest that bypasses the broken housing market entirely. The macroeconomic environment of this decade relies on keeping you perpetually liquidating your wealth, just to keep the broader consumer engine turning. But when you apply cold math to your biological impulses, your behavior becomes the ultimate defensive asset. You cannot fix the systemic flaws of the global economy, but you can absolutely make your personal balance sheet immune to them. The numbers never lie, but they do punish the silent. The question is not whether the system is rigged. It is whether your personal balance sheet is fast enough to outrun it. Tell me, if your liquid net worth is leaking at exactly $4.80 an hour today, exactly how many years of your future are you willing to let the algorithm steal by tomorrow morning?